So on the last lesson, I worked on creating the basic elements of my beat, which was, getting the drums, the bass, chords, and, a melodic progression that felt good for the idea that we wanted to create. So now on this, lesson, I would be expanding on that and creating the basic, sections of a song, going from an intro, a pre, a hook, a verse, and having something a little bit more structured where you can see a complete vision of what the song could be. So let's just, jump in and, start going. I really like going through like these elements that I already have and building from that. So, I tend to always start with the chords. I think it's something that's really cool and stripped down that will give you the feeling and the mood of what the song is without giving away, a lot. So I think I would start with this chord progression that we have over here, and just move it, to the beginning of the song, which would be the pattern before. So let's just like copy, which is Command C, and paste it on Command V. And it would be this very first pattern that comes in when you press play on the session that you have opened. And so let's see how that sounds, by itself without all the other elements. Right now I have it looped, which would be this little button over here, which would keep looping the same, pattern that you have selected. And it could give you a sense of just listening what you have, over and over without going into the next section, and just feeling that everything is sounding perfect by itself and in its own, section. So let's just play this and see how it sounds. And maybe we can start tweaking a little bit of this sound so it doesn't sound exactly how you have it on the full version, maybe coming in on the hook. And, you can always play around with it. So let's see how this, sounds right now. It sounds cool for an intro. I always like to play around with it and maybe, push down on the octave on the keys and, maybe add some effects to it that, make it sound a little bit more of an ambience. So I really like this plugin from Cable Guys called Halftime, which would do exactly that. Like it would just like take everything that you have and just halftime it, and you will listen it on a lower octave, maybe like stretched out, and it gives it like a cool like sound to it. And so I really like playing around with that, like using it in different sections and seeing how it sounds. Maybe the octave when you put the plugin on is too low, so I would tend to just like raise on my session the octave, and maybe it would sound a little bit better, but at a halftime, pace. So let's see how that sounds just doing it, on there. It will look like this. So right now it's on a 1-bar, loop. So let's see how this sounds just like doing it on there. So I think it sounds pretty cool. I think it could work. Maybe we can play around with it, a little bit later. But for now, let's use this as a complete intro of the song. So let's just move everything that's coming after a couple of patterns, later, so we can start building. So let's move it like 3 patterns to the right, so we can start, building a little bit. So this will start over here, just clean. I will loop it, so it can go twice so it doesn't sound as drastic, and see where we can, go from here and start building. That's maybe where the vocals of the artist start, coming in, and they can start singing. Maybe it can be on the second half, or maybe it could be on what we're going to after this. So let's play it so we can listen to it, all together and go from here. I like how it sounds. I think it can maybe have some element of ambience. So I will try finding over here vocal sample, vocal chop or something that could, add a little bit of, maybe a higher, note or a higher octave, which everything is really low right now. So let's play around and try and find some little element to give it, a little bit of ambience and maybe a little bit of movement, just a detail so it's not as simple. So let's open up audio track, which I did on Command T. And let's just go over here. Samples. Let's put like vocal and see maybe what we can have, around here that could probably work, and we can just like chop around or like raise the note and transpose. And that's the cool thing about this. You can really just play around with it and see what comes out. So let's start scrolling over here.
Yay. Check it out.
I like this. Maybe we can start like, opening a MIDI track and throw this sample over here. And every time I throw a sample, it will open up, the sampler from, Ableton, which will show you, the graphic of the, one shot or the audio file that you have. And, over here you can start like playing around with it. You can play with the attack, the sustain, the release of it. Maybe, making it as, just a one shot that could probably like loop. If you hit like the loop section, so you can see how it sounds. You can do whatever you want like with this. If you take it off like the loop section, it would just like play exactly what you have on the waveform. Now that I have it like on 1 in the voices, I can't do chords on it. So, it could be good if you're using like a bass or an 808, so it doesn't like lay on top of the next note that you're hitting, because since they're like low octaves, it would like mess with it and probably phase it out. But over here, since I would probably want to use a chord with this one shot, I'll add like 6 voices to it so I can really create a chord with it. Let's loop this over here, maybe add some reverb to it, and start seeing what kind of ambience we can create with this. So Valhalla, I think, has some amazing different types of reverbs and plugins that you can play around. You have a plate, you have a room, but I really like this one called Vintage Verb, which gives it a really spacey vintage type of sound. And I think it's my go-to reverb when I'm like working on songs, either on the vocals or either on the melodic elements of the track. So you can see that now it sounds more like, so it's a little bit more ambience, more a little bit bigger and not as present in your face, but more of a a touch. So let's just like go to the keyboards and start playing around with some melodies for this intro part, and start seeing where this can start like building and having like a proper intro for our song. So let's just like play this over here and go to the keyboards. like that progression. Let's record this and see if it works together with everything. So I think this gives it, you know, a little bit of, you know, a detail for an ambience, you know, behind these chords that we have, which are now on a lower octave, and so there's not as bright. But it gives you a little bit of the sense of, you know, what could be coming after. So let's just grab this, which the second half I think came out better than the first half that I recorded. Open it up, same thing. Let's, you know, select everything and quantize. And let's just grab the second, you know, half of it and copy and paste it over here. So we have the same, you know, the same pattern repeated twice, which would be the best take that we did. And let's see how that sounds together with this. So I think that's cool. For an intro, like for the first thing that you listen to when you listen to the track. So from here, I know I added the Cable Guys halftime to this intro part, but moving forward, I don't think I want it anymore for the pre or for the hook per se. So let's just go over here to this side where you can see all the automations that you would like to do on, you know, a specific track that you have on your project. So let's go to this one on, you know, the plugin that we were using, Anna, and go to the halftime over here and see where it says, you know, device on, and you can play around with this, and maybe you want it just on the intro but not, you know, really going forward. So what you would do is just go until like the point where you want it, you know, turned off, just lower it, and now this plugin will only sound on the beginning of your track. If by any chance at any point on the song you want to turn it back on, let's say just on the end of the hook, you would just raise this, you know, automation over here, and bingo, you have it. You can just like turn it on and off. And you know, sometimes that turning on and off and back off and back on will give it like a cool, you know, dynamic on the song. So maybe we can play around with that a little bit more going forward. But for now, I think we're good for the intro to have like the lower pitch vibe. So from my gut feeling, I think going forward we need to bring in the arpeggio melody, the melody that we did, you know, earlier, which I think is something that's really particular from the song. It will really, you know, give the essence of what the song is, and you know, that melodic element and progression that's gonna drive it. So let's introduce it before the hook comes in and see how that sounds coming from the intro going into like that pre that's gonna build up, you know, going into the hook, and see how, you know, how this part sounds over here. So I'm not gonna play it from the beginning. I'm just gonna play it from the second half until this point and see if that transition sounds good or we need to tweak some stuff up. So I like how it sounds. Like it goes from something really full with all the low end that the, you know, the first chords have, to something like super clean and, you know, a little bit more airy and spacey. So I think having this clean with just the artist or the songwriters, you know, vocals would sound super, you know, cool, and gives a right introduction to the sound because it's really just the sound and the vocals. So you will really listen to that particularly present and not get confused with any other sounds the first time it comes around. But for the second half, I think I would probably add this melodic element that we, added to the intro, but maybe on a higher octave. Maybe it's a little bit brighter and, builds up a little bit more going into the hook. So let's see how that sounds. Go from that and create, a proper intro going into the hook. So let's go over here. I just copy pasted to the second half of this pattern that we had over here, which I will also like go twice around. I just duplicated it into the, the second half. And let's open this MIDI over here. And you see it's now over here on the low octaves. Right now I can't really, listen to it if I don't have this, blue headphones, on. I can play with the keys. If I have it off, you won't listen to anything. So I just want to hear where it is right now. And maybe I select it all. If you press shift and up, it will go a complete octave up. It's something that helps me out a lot. I used to do it manually and just like move everything, but having that quick button right now helps a lot just to see the difference in octaves, and it could really help with the dynamic of the song. So now I have it on the next octave up, and let's see how that sounds going from what we just heard onto the second section. So I like how it sounds. I think it's building up to where we need it to be. And so I felt I wanted to go to the hook from this part, but I think we can go into introducing the drums, but maybe on a filtered vibe to it. Not as bright, not as present, but maybe it could start building up to where we need it to be, which would be to explode in the hook. So let's just move this section over here to the next pattern coming up, and let's grab the drums, which would be kick and snare over here, copy and paste it before. What I want to do on this that really helps me a lot sometimes with filtering, like let's say the drums specifically, if you have everything separate, you will have to like do the filter to every one, each one of them. So what I tend to do is just group the tracks. Like if you select these two, pressing shift, let's say all the tracks that you want to like do completely, that's how you select them all like at once. So right now I just want to use the channel 6 and 7, which would be kick and snare. Right click and you will go over here where it says group tracks. So now you have these two in a little like box, and if you go to the effects, window over here for the box where you have like the kick and the snare, everything that you put on top, like on, as a filter or reverb, distortion, delay, whatever you want, will play on both kick and snare at the same time. That way you're not adding the same effects like to each channel that you want to, filter, like distort or delay. So that to me for the drums really helps me a lot. And so yeah, let's go on to what I was trying to do, which would be adding a filter to it. So over here on the EQs and filters, there's the auto filter. Let's drag it up to the group. Let's call this group, let's rename it. Let's put it right click over here, let's put drums. So now I know I have a group where I have all my drums on it. And, if we keep adding hi-hats, different elements of percussion, we can just add it to this group over here. So right now, we have the filter. Here is everything sounding how it's supposed to be. Let's play like this alone right now so you can hear how it sounds. So everything sounds like how we had it before. But if you start to like scroll this knob over here down, you'll see like the image over here starts to get to the lower end. So it starts to get a little bit darker, like you start to take all the brightness out of it. So this is what I want to have on this next section coming up, which would be have the drums, but just feel the groove, but not completely there where, you know, it's supposed to sound when the hook comes in. So I want to have this element, probably, you know, raise the res over here a little bit so you can have a little bit, you know, the resonance on top. So I think these two over here have the right sound that I'm looking for on the drums. But I don't want it to go completely onto where the song, you know, starts. So I'm gonna stop on this kick right before the hook comes in. So let's just drag this over here and leave this last kick. But as you know, we have this, you know, filter right now over here. So what we want to do is go back to the automation section, which would be just pressing this button over here. And you see the, you know, frequency, the resonance. You can start like playing around with it, like everything inside of the filter. What I want to do is play with the device on and, you know, device off, which we played around with the halftime before. And let's just, as soon as this kick, you know, starts and ends over here, I'm gonna take it off. So when the hook comes, it doesn't have that filter, you know, playing. And, you know, it would sound as bright and punchy and complete as we had it before. So right now, we already filtered the drums. So I want to pass this element over here, which would be the arpeggio. Let's copy, paste it, and now let's see how this sounds over here. So I think I like how it sounds. Maybe I can play around with filtering this a little bit more too. So let's do the same thing. Go with a filter, throw into the Anna, you know, plugin, put everything at 0 where it's supposed to be. Open up the automation and start playing around with the frequency. You see how I just play around with this knob? So if I lay this down over here, you'll hear the difference coming from here. You see, it disappears because it starts like going into like the lower, you know, octaves of it. So I'm gonna put it in a mid, you know, section and start raising it halfway through. And the last kick, when it ends, you know, over here, you will hear like the full sound. So let's see how this sounds coming in. So I'll just go over here, you know, on the automation that we had on the drums. You know, everything was filtered, but I think I wanted to start like picking up halfway through. So it starts getting into like the brighter, more of what you're gonna hear next on the pattern that goes after. And, you know, start coming, you know, to life a little bit more, just as we did on the arpeggio. So let's raise this, you know, automation over here, which is working on the frequency, and bring it all the way up onto that last point where the, you know, the last kick comes in. You see everything is like lowered over here. Let's just like raise this all up completely so it's at its full potential as is, you know, when it's coming, you know, on the pattern, you know, after. So I think we gotta like take out or start lowering the resonance knob over here also, because if it stays up, I think it would give it like a kind of a weird sound. It is not playing when the drums come in completely, so we just want to start like bringing it down exactly to that point of that last kick that we had. So let's just play this pattern over here separately and hear how the drums and the automation in the arpeggio are sounding together, and see if we need to add or take some things out. So I think it sounds pretty cool. I think for it to grow, maybe we need to add a new element. And for me, from what I'm hearing right now in my head, it probably would be a sustained bass. I know that we have the sub that is coming in after this pattern right here, but I don't think that's the one that would work for what I have in mind. So let's just open up a MIDI track, and let's go into finding the right bass synth, sort of lead instrument. And I mean, which one could work? Let's go Native Instruments. It's company that I really like, the plugins that they have. So I think for this one it could probably work. This one called Super 8. I like it. It has a lot of vintage type synths and leads and basses, and I think it could probably work for what I'm looking for on this song. So let's go on to the options over here. I would probably not go to the bass. I would probably go to the synth lead and just play it on the lower, octaves. And that would give me the bass sound that I'm looking for, but not exactly being just, a simple bass. So let's start scrolling through sounds, and then we can start, going to the keyboards and playing the chords and see if we get something that will sound, special. So I'll go for the first one and start playing around and see if we find the right sound on it. Nah, I don't think so. I think this could probably work. Maybe if we play around with the sound a little bit, maybe work on the shape of, the waveform. I think this could sound a little bit better. Maybe filtering the sound would probably have the vibe that I want for it. So let's go to another, filter, throw it in the track, and start playing around with, the filter and frequency sound of this plugin. I think this is a little bit more or less of what I'm, listening to in my head. So let's just go to the keyboards, play this pattern, back and forth, and see if this is the one. And and probably we can just finally get to the hook that we've been aiming to from the get-go. So I think I like it. Let's record this and start playing around with, using some, maybe adding more filter to it, maybe adding some, elements of effects. So let's just record this loop and go back to this. So I think this works. Open up, select all, quantize. And I think I need this to be a little bit more filtered. I think it's still too present, the synth sound that it has. So let's just go to the section of the effects over here in track. And let's play it and start messing around with the frequency and the resonance. Maybe we can add this element of the chorus, but not having it with the halftime plugin that we had, that we're probably moving into the lower octave. Let's see how it sounds. Just copy and pasted the one that we have on the hook and see how that sounds together with what we have on this pattern leading up to the hook. So I think I did something on the bass that I like better than what we have over here on top of the chords. So what I would do is just add in this other note that we have on this end of the pattern and just replace it from this one that we have over here. So I'll just like move it to the back. How I did that, I'll just like cut whatever I have on the MIDI track by using Command E. That would just cut the section that I would like, choose. So I'll just like drag this over here and see how that sounds now with this note going up, how I have it over here on the bass. Better. So I think it's cool. I think since everything is filtered, maybe I want to also filter the chords. So let's go add a filter to this one over here. Same thing, bring it to 0, everything. Go to the automation and just select this section over here, which is just like leaving, the button pressed and just like scroll around it. And let's just lower everything halfway and see how this sounds right now. It's too dark. Maybe we raise it a little bit, and maybe also play a little bit with the resonance. Maybe raise it up a little bit. So now let's see how that sounds going into the hook that we already have initially, and see if that is a good, build up to what we had, or if we need to adjust anything on the hook. So let's play this together, just these two patterns, and see how this sounds. So I like it. I think we now have to work a little bit on the hook, maybe to give it that, feeling that you got to the hook, so it doesn't like bring the whole song down when it comes in and you've been waiting so long to get to this point. So I think first we just gotta like raise a little bit the volume on the bass. Let's see how this sounds with a higher octave over here on this bass. So same thing with this, shift, go up. think that sounds a little bit better. Like you get a sense of where the bass is. Maybe we can add some saturation to this bass. So let's go to the effects, drive and color, and saturator over here. If you open it up, it'll give you like different presets, and there's one here that says warm up lows, which would give it a little bit of, you know, that resonance and feel for the lower octaves. So let's see if that, you know, helps it out a little bit to bring it more to the forefront. I think we need to raise these two over. I think that works a little bit better. You get to hear the bass a little bit more. I will raise the drums a little bit also, so let's see how that sounds over here. Now that we have the bass over here sounding a little bit, you know, more present, I think we need to like add an EQ to that group channel that we have on the drums, and maybe add some brightness to it also. And just to play around, I think this element that we had on the vocal, let's see how it sounds in the hook. We can keep playing around with it. I think I like it, but I think I will make a better melody just for the hook. So let's just like delete this over here. Let's just loop this pattern over here. Go to the keyboard and find the extra supporting melody to give it that punch that it needs. So I think I like that melody. Let's record this over here and see if it works together with everything. So let's play around with this one over here. Open it up. Let's select and quantize. Maybe we can duplicate this channel so we can just adjust certain things that we want to play around with this specific sound on the hook and not mess around what we already had on the intro. So let's just like Command D. It will duplicate the same track that you have. So let's erase the one that we had original on top, so we can have this separate over here, and erase everything that we had from the intro on that track. So now we can just play around with this, you know, sound separate. So I think we can add plugin that I like. Let's go. Okay, Nicky Romero has this plugin called Kickstart. So it would do a sidechain effect on the track. So sidechain will basically, you know, lower the volume, and, you know, let me open it up so you can see like how the waveform is. So you see this wave where it starts like down. This is like the volume every time the kick comes in. So you have like this like up and down and, you know, more groovy feel to the melody. I will play the sound solo, if you press the S over here, you would just listen to this track. And so let's hear it without and with, so you can tell the difference of what I'm, talking about. So without it, it sounds like this. With it, it would sound like this. So you see it has like this up and down feel, and I think it gives it a little bit of movement, something different, not so, stiff. So I think this will give it a little bit of a nice element for the hook. So let's see how everything sounds with it together. So I like it. I think this gives it that little element that I needed for me to feel that we got to the hook. What I'm missing right now on the drums is a hi-hat. So let's open up one more track on this drum group, and let's just go and find a hi-hat over here. Let's write hi. I think I'll get like some hi-hat sample. It's not a hi-hat, but it started with high, so let's see. We find something that could work perfect for this. Maybe if we go over here, maybe find a closed hi-hat. I'm gonna drag this one not into a MIDI track, just draw it into the session, so you would just see the waveform. So if we open it up, you would just see the wave how it is. How if you open the MIDI track, you will see it on the sampler. Here I'm gonna have it outside, and sometimes I like doing this because I can play around with it, just cut it off, maybe pitch it down, pitch it up, like just mess around with it a little bit more in detail rather than just having it on the sampler. So let's just play with it right here and start like seeing if you find the right sound and the right level to it. So right now I'm gonna put it every time the kick comes in. So let's just like grab this section and just duplicate it every time the kick comes in. So it'll be each 4 little grids on the section, and let's see how that sounds. So I think we can probably give it a little bit of more movement. So to do that, I would add one more in between. So it would be, every 2. So let's just duplicate that. And let's see how that sounds right now. I like it. I think I would probably add that kickstart plugin that I just used on that melody that we just did. So let's just go up to it, hit copy and paste, because I think it's a little bit too busy. But if we take away a little bit of the volume on the beginning for it to sound like this, so it goes more up and down. It's not like all the time just like without it. Let's see how that sounds now. So I like it. I'll probably grab this knock, which is the plugin that we use to like add some punch to the drums, onto the main drum group, and see if it adds a little bit to it. Let's just like play around with it and see how that sounds. I'm gonna take it all the way off and just start playing with this plugin just on the drum group, so it will do the same effect to the kick, to the snare, and to the hi-hat. So here I'm just saturating it a little bit more so it feels a little bit more heavy and, not as flat. So, I really like playing with the knobs and just like looping and listening and trying stuff. Sometimes I mess up and, get a weird sound from it, but sometimes I just stumble upon like a cool sound or something that added the little element that I was missing. So I think that's something cool to have in mind. Like there's nothing specific. Like I'm just giving you the right tools and the things that help me get from point A to point B. But along the way, you can just like scroll and just come up with great ideas and great things that create your sound. So this for me is something cool just to like saturate it. Let's just make it a little bit bigger, not as clean, and maybe we get, I think this is the sound that we were looking for. So now let's play from the beginning and see how are we going from straight start onto this point where it's supposed to be the hook, and see if we have something, that works, that gives you the idea of, okay, these are the sections on the song, and see if we did it the right way. So let's start playing this from the start and see how we are right now. I like how it sounds. I think along the way, I feel when everything just filtered down, maybe the arpeggio got a little bit lost. So let's just go over here and take a little bit out of that, frequency on the automation, maybe raise it up a little bit. And maybe raise the resonance on it. Just in this section over here. And I think that sounds a little bit better. It got a little bit lost. And the hook, I would probably repeat it, go another, second way around. And just from this, I think we have a proper, beginning, intro, pre, building up into the hook. And from now, only thing that I'm missing is probably adding a verse, something that goes, after what we had on the hook. So from my, experience and sitting down with artists or sitting down with, songwriters, what they look for on a verse is a more stripped down version of what the hook is. So what I would do is probably take away something that makes the track, more busy, which would probably be the arpeggio, or it probably could be that second melody that we just added. So let's just like copy this entire section onto the right, which would be, Command D, and let's just loop this section over here and take away first this second melody element and see how that sounds. I think it still sounds a little bit too much like the hook, so let's take away the arpeggio. At 0, you would just mute this, section that you selected. I think it sounds a lot better. It's a lot more stripped down than what the hook is. I think I will make a break in the drums when it starts to give it a little bit of, of a breather. So I would just keep the first kick and first hi-hat and go straight until this point where you have this only snare and hi-hat coming in. So let's listen how it comes in after the hook so you can get a sense of what the break that I just did on the beat. So I think that gives it a little bit of a breather since the drums on the hook are just like going all the way through. I think it's something that gives it a little bit of a nice element to just change the pace and change, the vibe. And listening to it right now, I think I would probably add this element that we had on the beginning on the track, which was this melody, but on the lower octave. And let's see how that sounds. And I think with this, we have a proper, verse. So let's just like play this part over here and see how this sounds right now. So I like it. I think this is something that, at least for writing, for coming up with melodies, is really basic because sometimes if you add too much melodies or too much melodic elements, an artist or songwriter could get a little bit lost because they're listening to so many competing melodies. Sometimes you want to give them, that space for them to just create, and maybe along the way they'll feel, okay, we need a melody over here or something that's, going exactly with the melody that I'm doing. So I think those are elements that you keep on going as you're creating an actual song. But for the beat, I think less is a lot more sometimes, and just leaving those open spaces for them to create new melodies, but having a basis of what the chords are, I think is an important part for the presentation of a beat or an idea. So I think from this point on, I would duplicate this track that we just did on the verse. No break on the second half, so I would just like copy the same section that we had on the hook on the drums onto this section that we have over here. And from this point on, return to the filtered part that we had before the hook and going back into the hook. So I would go back into this part over here, select everything, copy it, and paste it. So from this, second hook going twice around, I would just add like that element that we had on the intro, which would be those like lower octave, keys and chords, and just have it as an outro or a closing. So guys, I'm really happy with what we have right now. So let's just go from the top and just play it and see what we got. So I think with these elements, you're able to show the different, dynamics on the song. You build it up for the hook, you bring it down for the verse, you bring the pre and the hook back up on a second go around. And I think you have all the elements that you need to create a song and create a track and have all the elements and structure wise have something that you can build upon. So now it's your turn. Go ahead and grab all those elements of your basic, beat and start expanding it. Create the elements and the sections that you want for the song. You can do it exactly how I did, having an intro, a pre and a hook going into the first verse. Or maybe you can do it, in a different way. You can go intro into the first verse, create a pre and then go into the hook. And however it feels good to you, just create whatever feels amazing to you, to whatever you're creating, to whatever your sound is, and just have fun, guys.